rather snappy, won't you? I have some very heavy thinking to do before 10 o'clock.
Welcome to another episode of Perfectly Imperfect. I have the pleasure of sitting here with Carla Birnberg. We met yesterday, and in the matter of 59 minutes, I feel like we've known each other forever. Carla is a self-described serendipitous entrepreneur who got off the path and never got back on. So, Carla, I'm so jazzed to talk to you and have the audience hear your story today. Welcome.
I'm so happy to be here. I'd actually forgotten that description, and it's super apt. I think I'm kind of consistently carving a new path, but I think it's a fallacy that we need to have that this is where I'm going and I'm never deviating mentality.
Right. And we've all been there. I think people, whether they want to admit it or not, they've felt that, and they may be on the wrong path, but it pays the bills, or it's all that they know. And, you know, talking with you yesterday and really learning more about your story, which spans every aspect of life, you know,
Of the
from being a
decades.
of the decades. But, you know, again, it's very impressive to speak with you and learn about you. You've been in a role very similar to mine in the way I've come through as a CMO, fractional CMO. It's taken you with brands like Fila, Birkenstock. It's taken you all over the world doing things. But there was a part of our conversation yesterday that I really want to focus on today, and that's about consistency, which we'll get into. And then we're going to talk about your ventures in Kenya, which are undoubtedly, it makes your heart melt. There's a lot of lessons there.
Yeah, my
It's
heart
crazy.
home.
It is. And what you told me about that, and I took so many notes, and I think the people watching this will be so interested because your story is amazing. But before we get into all of that, I do a little thing where, just to get going, people getting to know you beyond the success, beyond the bigger stories, with just little stuff. We all are our own individuals. So you and I talked a little bit yesterday. Some of my previous guests, we've talked about tattoos. Talk about your tattoos.
I have a lot of tattoos, and I'm a big believer. I mean, I don't know how popular this line of thinking is. I don't get anything unless it really means a lot to me. So I have a full, and here's where I could stand up or lift my shorts clad leg into the air, but I will not. Dr. Seuss leg sleeve. I love Dr. Seuss. I've written a lot about how the lessons he's taught me about life and healthy living through his picture books. But also, my daughter's adopted from Guatemala, and she's known this her whole life. But when she was little, I didn't really have a way to explain it to her. So I appropriated Dr. Seuss's Horton hatches an egg, because Horton
Oh,
sits on
that's
the
awesome.
egg and it comes out as an elephant bird. And so it was a way of explaining adoption to her. You know, I have a ton, and they're all really important to my path and who I am now and who I was then.
That's so cool. I think as we talked, you know, I have one of my arms is dedicated to family,
I
and
love that.
people look at it and they don't get it. And,
Yep.
you know, it's so cool that you and your daughter share that. You also have writing on your
I
wrist.
do. And it's funny because sometimes I think people glance at it like, is that a prison tattoo? Because we did our own handwriting. She turned 18, and I said, because I knew at this point, free reign. In Texas, you can get any tattoos. And she said, I want to get matching tattoos. And it was a leap of faith. I said, you pick whatever you want. And she said, she wanted an anchor. She said, I want you to write, I love you, heart mom. And hers is right here. And then she wrote, I love you. Let's see if I can get it in. Her name is Emma, and I got that tattooed on. And I was a little ambivalent the first even week. I was like, what, holy shit, what have I done? Like, this is a thing when I go to job interviews or meetings. But the more I look at it, I think that's my anchor. It's what we talked about yesterday. I've done a lot. That human is my best thing. I am so proud of her that, yeah, I want it tattooed.
That's awesome. Question for you. There's a podcast that I listen to, and someone brought up when they evaluate a client or they're hiring somebody, they always ask a question about music.
Okay.
And music is kind of in everybody's world, whether they acknowledge it or not, I'm a
Yes.
huge music person, and I don't want to. I'll never ask the question, "Who's your favorite band?" because that can change, and I don't think that's a fair question. But Spotify or iTunes, whatever it is you use, what was the last song or the last search you had?
I mean, I should not be allowed to live in Austin because very hip. Everyone's going to see the latest, greatest. I am 90s hip hop.
Oh boy.
I am, and mostly I listen to music in the gym. I'm a big podcast. I'm also a clarinet player, and I have a B
Really?
flat clarinet and E flat clarinet, so I'm classical if I listen while I'm working. But no, when I'm in the gym, it's me. And I mean, people that I don't think anybody even remembers. Mace, who I think is now a preacher in
Oh,
Atlanta.
yes.
Do you remember
Yes.
Mace?
Yes. I'm a
Yeah.
90s hip hop guy. My kid, I
Okay.
torture my kids in the car on the way to school. It's either grunge or it's 90s hip hop. And
Yeah.
my wife and I are funny. We went to college in the 90s, mid 90s.
Okay.
So that was our anthem.
I
All the
think that's it.
Outcast, I mean, Mace,
It
Rob Bass, I
is.
mean, all of it. So we
Yes.
know every single word still, and we torture our
Big
kids. They're
Pun,
so,
Fat Joe.
yes, yes. That's amazing. Along those lines, you said you're a big podcast person. What are you listening to?
I mean, I was listening this morning to, I like the long. Some people don't enjoy that. It was Tim Ferriss and
Yes.
James Clear, who, I mean, let's talk moonshot visions. It's Peter Attia, James Clear, Carla Birnberg, right in the middle. But I love James Clear. I love how he's been talking a lot lately about parenting. It's atomic habits. It's I've done these great things, but it's also how do I want to set up my life so I can be present for my kids? So I love that. I love Smartless.
That's excellent. Question for you: pizza, favorite topping?
This is so bad. I know. I am the world's most boring person. By Carla. I became gluten-free 34 years ago before there were substitutes. So I never eat pizza.
Wow, my
I
son would
know.
be so disappointed.
My child is disappointed, although she says more for
Right?
me. I know. You've got to ask me the shoe
What's your
question.
favorite cheat meal?
See, this goes back to, thank you for the segue, consistency. I don't frame it like that. I mean, I will never forget, it was my older sister's wedding. We went out for dinner before, and I was like, favorite restaurant, ordered all this stuff. And she looked at me and said, you have so much willpower. And I thought, oh, I have no willpower. I would hate willpower. Like, I love my life. I love the movement I get. I love the way I eat. And if I didn't, I would change it. So no cheat. It's just
You
life.
No cheat meal. I like it. So
No.
one of the areas we talked about yesterday in consistency, there's a quote that you put, but you've been in boardrooms. You've been, as I
Mm-hmm.
said, you've been all over the world. But the one thing that you fell back to way before that was fitness. Talk a
Mm-hmm.
little bit about what that did when you had that moment where you said, "This is important to me, and this is going to be a part of my life." What was that moment, and what happened shortly after that? What were some of the challenges? Walk us through what that feeling was.
I mean, it has been decades, and I still say I'm not fitness, and my people, I call them my front row people, are all, no, you are fitness, because I can't stop proselytizing because it was so life changing. Kenyon College, lovely school, small private liberal arts. I was terrible at everything but English lit, and I thought, this is amazing. There are no requirements, math, languages, super uncoordinated, which is why I love what I love. So I went to Kenyon and I realized in a panic senior year that there was a gym requirement. We were Division III football, so our football coach was not very highly in demand. He was supposed to be easy. Took a weightlifting class. Again, Division III, it's fancy now, but crappy, dusty gym. And I thought, this will be so simple. And I mean, it really, like, it chokes me up. It's now 34 and a half years later, but going in there, and what was not an easy A, I mean, it was hard physically and hard to learn, and I'm not coordinated, changed my life. And I found my voice in the weight room. I realized as a 20-year-old woman I never really bought into the skinny thing. It's not my physicality, but it really shifted how I showed up in the world. I wanted to take up space. I wanted to be bigger. I wanted to be more powerful. And what we talked about yesterday and what I think about a lot is it taught me about the importance of rest when it comes to fitness, strategic pauses when it comes to life. We can't go balls to the wall. I have a version for women that I use with my clients, which is not that. But we can't go balls to the wall all the time and expect to not burn out. So that was my first introduction to consistency, even when it comes to things like trying to gain our power, grow our voice, whatever it is.
I read a lot, and in my past, we've done a lot of coaching for executive teams,
Mm-hmm.
and they've always said, a healthy body, healthy mind. That even and it's not extreme working out. I'm 46
That's
years
it.
old now. The last time I was doing extreme workout, I hurt my back, and I took 3 years off where I was afraid to go back in the gym because every time I lifted, I had a coach that went way too hard with me, and I told him I didn't want to do that. I have 3 little kids, and
Yes.
I'm a dad. I want to be healthy, I want to be flexible, but I also want my mind clear. And that's a big thing that I think people look at. And you go on LinkedIn, you see all these jacked people that are like, you got to go hard, and that's the only way. And
Yeah.
that's such a misconception. Can you talk a little bit about that and how it doesn't matter? Like, you've been doing this for a very long time,
Yeah.
and your body is used to that. But for
Yeah.
someone that's been on the sidelines or gone through traumatic things or going through a lot of work, what is your advice to those people?
Such a good question. And I think, I've been doing this for a long time because I've set myself up. I don't know how I intuited. I mean, I remember when I started lifting, saying to my then boyfriend and like flexing, and I said, I look like I've never been in the gym. And I've been in the gym a lot. And he said, yeah, you really don't. And I had that moment of, I didn't have the language back then. Consistency is a pattern. It's not perfection. I was perfect. I mean, I was at the gym for an hour lifting and then an hour of cardio. I was always tearing down, and I didn't realize less is more. Even now, yes, I've been doing it for years, but I love my local Jewish community center. It's where I lift, and they laugh and call me lightning because I'm in and out in 20 minutes. I don't want to live there. So I think whether we're starting out or doing it forever, unless we're gearing up for competition, it's setting ourselves up for success. And when I work with executives, I have the M word modality, and it's 3 by 3 by 3, and it focuses on health, habits, and community. But coaching, my master's degree is in educational counseling. I'm not your therapist, I'm your coach. So you define what's important to you. And then I come back to you with, okay, you've said this is important. Do you have the capacity to do this every single day until you're dead? And if your reaction is, holy shit, no, then let's just reevaluate. That's the larger framework.
That works so well. And, consistency. You have a quote about consistency, those that are successful and those that aren't. Can you elaborate on that and
I
tell
think
everybody
about
what it
this
is?
a lot because sometimes we don't really want something we think we do. So it's successful people are successful in whatever it is. It could be Zumba, it could be writing the novel, because they do consistently what the rest of us do sporadically.
Yeah. And when you think about that, it's so true. Whether you're working out or you're teaching your kids or you're practicing something for yourself, every aspect of life. And I really, that stuck with me. I wrote it down and I showed it to my
Mm-hmm.
kids last night.
I love that.
And one of my sons, he's learning to play the drums. And he's got the little drum set, and he goes to practice once a week with a coach. He said, what are you doing on the other days? Even if it's 5 minutes a day, you'll get better.
That
Yeah.
is it. And it's really, the consistency is most important on our bad days when we still do something it's a huge win. I mean, on the days that he's feeling great and into the drums and we'll practice for an hour, that's lovely. But it's the days he doesn't want to do it that are the biggest deal.
I find that my wife and I are very similar in that aspect where we get up, you may have stayed up too late or the kids, something. I don't feel like going for that walk this morning. And it's, let's just walk them to the bus stop, come back, we'll do something else, but just do something. That has always been
Walking,
important.
I mean, I laugh because I say this out loud to myself all the time. And my high school Latin professor teacher, Mr. Bickett, would die. I need to reach out to him because the phrase solvitur ambulando, it is solved by walking. Everyone, Steve Jobs, Virginia Woolf, Charles Darwin, Soren Kierkegaard, it's the movement. And for me, there's a real separation there between I'm not watching my steps. I don't have an Apple Watch or a step counter. It's the movement, it's the mind clarity, it's the problem solving. That walk, it changed my life. I mean, I've been consistently walking with intentionality probably for 12 years. Just, it can be 10 minutes. It can be, I used to say to my personal training clients all the time when they would say, I only have a little bit of time. We're not training for the Olympics. 10 plus 10 plus 10 is 30. There's your 30 minutes a day. It doesn't need to be, maybe it would be ideal. I don't care because I want them to do it forever. If they grab 10 minutes 3 different times a day, there's your 30.
I've discovered where people who take off their shoes and walk in the grass, there's a magnetism, there's something there. So we just finished, we had a jungle. We live in Central Florida and we have a jungle in our backyard. And we just brought in all this dirt, leveled it, and then put sod down. And again, it's a tropical paradise. But I've started between meetings taking 5 or 10 minutes, throw the flip flops off, and just walk through the grass. And everybody, my wife thinks I'm so weird. My neighbors probably think I've lost it. But
I do the same thing.
Yeah, the connection
grounding.
with the earth, there's magnetism
Yep.
that it, again, at the most stressed point. And I'll have 2 of my sons they have challenges with autism and anxiety. And, I'll take them with me. And it's amazing. Hey, come walk with dad. Yeah. And you just walk and you're not paying attention to your feet on the ground. You're just releasing. And it's amazing what that can do. So you obviously practice this.
I do. And I'm grateful. I love my parents. They want me to move back north. Texas,
No way.
For all its challenges, has the best weather. And it's that. I mean, I need to look back into what Japanese forest bathing is because I think it's a little more in the forest. But I frame it like that in my mind. But I'll take off my shoes and just stand and ground because we are just energy. As woo as that sounds, we are just animals, and it's really grounding.
Yeah, I need to do it more consistently because when I'm done, you just feel different. Your shoulders come back. You're not carrying the world. You and I talked about and randomly came up Donald Miller, best-selling New York Times best-selling author. He's written so many books, probably most popular for Story Brand. Every marketer knows Story Brand.
Yeah.
But we talked about, A Million Miles in 50 Years, Scary Close.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about how he changed the way you look at things.
I should be his PR person because, like I said to you yesterday, A Million Miles and Scary Close, I bought at least 50 copies of each and gave them away to people. You've got to read this. He does a couple things really interestingly. I mean, first of all, Story Brand. He's a fantastic marketer. It gives you the template. It's already been out there for ages, the hero's journey, but he breaks it down really well. But he does what I think, I want to say we, but I'll put it on myself. I long to do. I have this, global day job. And then I have this other thing that is really the essence and core of who I am. And they work together well. With his nonfiction books, he is supremely vulnerable and open and just talks about his mistakes and his successes as a human. And he navigates that so well. And talking about the birth of his first child, and he hasn't said this, I don't think, but on some level you watch his face and his actions and you think, oh yeah, he loves this much more than Story Brand. This is it now, as it should be. Like, that is the core. No one will ask him on his deathbed, how many copies of that book did you sell? what are your successes? And right now you can see it's his child. And I love that.
Legacy. I think his
Yes.
legacy is, and again, I'm excited to go read that because I have not. I'm the
Oh,
typical
it's
marketer
so
that
good. Yeah.
my brother and I flew to Nashville. We went through Story Brand in person,
I'm
and
so jealous of
it
that.
changed my career.
Yeah.
It really did. I've worked with big companies that honestly could care less about the customer, and it's all
Yeah.
about features and benefits or what's best for
Yes.
us. And when you really go deeper than that, I'm so glad, by the way, he did not leverage or copyright Perfectly Imperfect, because I think a lot of the undertones are
Yeah.
that. But what I also did, and we talked about this, was looking at Story Brand for my relationships, for how I work with my kids,
Yeah.
for my wife, for my family, and it's applicable to everything. How to
It
Win
is.
Friends and Influence People, Story Brand, those two books
I know I'm
have
going to read that
changed.
now. I
Yeah,
felt like
you
I've
have
read
to
it
now.
because I hear about it so much, but I'm trying to think what I've read recently that was life changing. I've become podcast McGee. Like, not attention span, but it's the walking the dog. I need to read that book though, because Dale Carnegie, everybody
Yeah,
references.
yeah. So you've mentioned, when I hear you talk, you have a mentality which is very close to my heart. I always say this, and people laughed at me, but it's a run through walls mentality. Like,
Mhm.
there is no hurdle. There are no hurdles that will stop you. There are no internal mental blocks that will stop you. How, again, you've been in some pretty important boardrooms in the United States and across the globe. How does that mentality, again, from working out, fitness, the mindset, to being really good at marketing, how do you carry that run through walls mentality into these boardrooms and now into your newer ventures over in Africa?
Interesting when you said that yesterday, this is my mentality. I thought, oh yeah. But then last night I was thinking, you know what I am? And this is again not sexy, but it's on brand because it's consistent. I think I'm that drop of water that there must be a quote, but I'm going to get it wrong. That a drop of water can cut through stone if it just keeps plopping. And I think that's me. I have that ability in my current job. It's only about listening to other people and really keeping myself out of the story in this current role. And I'm amplifying what they are saying. But I don't know if I listen and then I kind of discern, okay, I still think we can get there. Here's the path. It's the drop of water. It's not going to be quickly and it's not going to be flashy or sexy, but we'll get there a little bit every single day. And then you'll look behind yourself and say, it's done.
What was as a CMO, what was one of your favorite campaigns across all the brands you've worked with? What's something that you look back and you're like, man, that was really good?
I should say Birkenstock. Loved it. Really fun print ad, but it's not that. It's the coming on to this group of humans in the United States. I knew nothing about Africa. I mean, I made all the mistakes and truly was and am the living embodiment of know better, do better. I think I said third world a few times in one of my first meetings. We do not say that. I didn't know. So I'm proud of this because it was a big learning experience and also the creativity of, okay, we're based in Austin. We all know Silicon Valley, and Austin is like, oh, hell no, we're the tech capital. So Silicon Hills being the ATX meets the Silicon Savannah. And it's a word catchy phrase, but for the team internally and for the Kenya Airways, the companies with whom we work, it's that mental bridge of, oh, we get it. It's the hills to the Savannah, and we are coming together and working on, at that point, it was technology. Super proud of it. Still wear my fleece jacket where it says Silicon Hills meets Silicon Savannah.
That's awesome. What was one that failed? Where was there something you did in your career where you felt good about it and it flopped?
Oh my gosh, how much time do you have? I really do buy into the notion of fail big. And so I'm channeling that with I haven't found it yet with the consistency advantage. but it's coming. When I had my personal training studio, I thought, I fancied myself a natural bodybuilder. I've competed like 3 times last. From the minute we stepped on stage, the judges were like, oftentimes I was in the center, maybe height or last name, but it was always, okay, you move out here because we don't need to look at you anymore. So I failed at a lot of things, but I thought I'm like super into this. I'm going to private label a protein supplement. It wasn't cheap. Got it carried by our Whole Foods subsidiary in Chapel Hill. If I sold 1 tub, it was a miracle. It did not go well. But then I learned. I learned about the marketing. I learned stay in your lane. It was not my gift, but oh my gosh, it was a money failure and a little bit of an ego failure, but I learned a ton.
You talk about there was a quote or a term when you went to Kenya last year, and every time you go, they greet you with "Welcome home." Mm-hmm. What does that mean to you?
I have my bracelets have gotten a little bit messy, but I always wear the Kenya flag bracelet. I could never. I look back and think, and gratitude is another thing we should touch on briefly, but I look back and think how lucky I am. I could never have envisioned my life experiences being what they were the past 4.5 years. And it was tough. I am a white woman, America, very little in common with the team there. And when I started, it was slow. A lot of times people didn't turn on their videos because camera didn't feel comfortable with me yet. And it was to flog that poor dead equine consistency of showing up and really building the relationship. So the first time I landed in Kenya and I turned on my phone and all the messages came in, Karibu Kenya, welcome home. It's every time I get off the airplane into that airport, I could cry because it really feels like home.
Now you're working with folks with disabilities. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit more about what it is, what, the main goal is, and some of the challenges you as a group have faced? Because it's people in the United States don't realize that, a lot of what you're dealing with over there, it's almost out of a horror movie. Talk a little bit about that.
And I understand. I have had conversations with persons with disabilities here, and that's our language as branding. So that's what I fall back on, who say, but there's still stigma here. And it's almost, to go back to fitness, stigma on steroids. Like there may be some discrimination here and buildings aren't up to ADA code, but there, 2024, there's still so much shame and fear. I've had a baby who has a disability, missing limbs, whatever it is. This is shame upon me and my family. And if I bring my child back to the village, they're going to think my entire family is cursed. So there is still whispered, and sometimes it feels like shouted, encouragement to hide the children away at best. Some of these individuals are starting what we frame as elementary school at 13, 14, 15, because they've been socially isolated in their room, or euthanized. I have worked with the same team for almost 5 years now. And my manager, she's my right-hand woman on the ground. We have a public story posted, tells the story of she was born and has cerebral palsy, and it's tradition for the father to bestow the name on the child. And the entire father's side of the family turned their backs and said, we want nothing to do with this. So that is, I recently launched a new project, which I'm super excited about. That's what we're focusing on, mitigating this past trauma that they've experienced, giving them the tools to navigate future life experiences. If I have a disability and I go into an office building in Nairobi, which is not that different from downtown Austin, when you look at it, it's just not that different. It is still, the assumption is, no matter how they're dressed, disability, beggar, leave. And so the new project is bringing counselors with disabilities into these special schools, which are only students with disabilities, and through donor funding, doing group therapy sessions. And I'm so proud of the efforts. The therapists we found in Kenya are phenomenal. I work with the greatest team, and hopefully we'll go from Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, and really spread out in East Africa and make a change of acceptance.
You talked about gratitude. I
Yes,
mean,
yes,
I,
yes.
I can't imagine any more illustrative or any more of an example of gratitude than when you step off that plane or when you have these calls. Again, we have plenty of issues here, so I don't need people giving
Right.
me shit about this conversation. Everybody, children especially, deserve better. When
Yes.
you
Yeah.
when you look at this, I can imagine, because I've watched a lot of documentaries
Mhm.
where people go and they help, whether it's domestically or abroad. Children that are helped, there's nothing more fulfilling than seeing a smile or hearing a child say thank you.
Yeah.
How has that impacted you?
I was thinking before our call, and again, nothing against the United States. We do a lot of volunteering, but what has struck me from the day I took the job, that was a for profit, and now I'm with the nonprofit arm, how deeply committed to giving back my team is. Now, they are all employed and have jobs, but themselves and their friends, they commit so much time to volunteering. And I said to one of the team members, but Peter, what if I don't have any money to give? What do I do? He's like, you show up. There's more of a sense of community, not to mention I want to say multi-generational living. It appears from the outside, and maybe most of it is, to be sparked by need and necessity, but it's that respect for older people, the connection to the community. I mean, my team has made so many different tribes, and they really function as one. I finally asked, again, slang, white person, Mzungu. I said, are you just not telling me? Do I just not realize there's friction? And they said, no, it's just they are working together to all kind of elevate Kenya.
You just touched on the generational connection, the respect of elders and family. I remember growing up in the 70s and 80s where it was closer knit families. Again,
Yeah.
it didn't matter race or anything like that, but it just seemed like there was more, there wasn't the internet and social media and separation. You
Yeah.
sat around a table and you listened, and it was both of my grandfathers passed away before I was born. So I
Oh,
had
wow.
grandmothers, aunts, and uncles, and those were times that you really looked forward to,
Yeah.
the holidays, or even, learning from them. And it's so important there, but here it's changed. Talk a little bit about the difference that you see.
It's connection. I mean, it's become so trite, but I feel like we are super disconnected. I don't know if your twins or your daughter are into, mine is not, but the gaming. And I have friends who say, I'll encourage my kids to go and get together with their peers. And they're like, but I am. We're all playing Fortnite. We're so disconnected here. I don't know. I mean, there's a philosophy that says everything comes from a foundation of fear or love. And I want to say it's very dramatic, but I've been there and experienced it. Really feels like, I'm going to say it, Africa, Kenya, my team, it's from a place of love, everything. And it's their job, but it's also, they're deeply committed to what they do.
Yeah. I think what you're doing is phenomenal. Disabilities, and I'm on the board for David's Refuge. They are an organization that provides respite for families that have severely special needs children, medical.
I love that.
And they go in with they give the parents or partners or family unit a break for a weekend,
So
give
important.
them
Yep.
wellness weekends, and then
Yeah.
they come in with the appropriate healthcare professionals, or they just take care of everything. And
Yeah.
it's a group that I was introduced to about 9 years ago, and I eventually joined the board. And again, I have two children, one that's on the autism spectrum, one that will probably be diagnosed but has severe anxiety
It's a lot.
and ADHD. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And then we have a third child that doesn't have any of that. And it's
And
not
it's
just the
hard on
children
the
that are
third child
impacted.
as well. That's it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's hard on a marriage. It's hard
Oh,
all
yeah.
over. And so, going and finding groups like this, or, community, as you said, is one of your three pillars,
Yeah. Yeah.
community. So it's heartwarming to hear how people care and give of themselves, whether it's in the US or in Kenya. As you've done all of these things, when you look back and you say, you know, my legacy is this,
Mhm.
what do you want that story? How do you want those words to be on the page?
Created connection wherever she went. I mean, we had a big HOA board meeting last night, and I thought, I am off the damn board. I have done 2 years. I am done. And I'm not really that close to my community, comma. However, last night, everybody said, please don't leave. You've brought us all together through your emails, through how you show up in the world. That's success. It's not getting another Birkenstock contract or having wonderful pistachios reach out. I thought, well, that makes me really happy. That's what I want to leave in my wake.
That's excellent. Carla, you are full of energy. We've already talked, there, male or female, doesn't matter. That consistency, your message, your energy, again, like you said, you are a connector.
Yeah.
And within one phone call with you, we've become friends.
I know. I
And
love it.
talk a little bit about, we laughed about getting to the dance too early. You've had the two fitness chicks and a blog or a mic. It was before
Yes.
the craze. You had the bracelets before Live Strong.
Yes.
Talk about what you're doing now, because you've been an influencer without the cape that
Yes.
modern times has given. Talk about what you have going on, some new projects, and then how everybody can see what you're doing and learn from you.
It is funny. I mean, I have friends say to me all the time, what's coming? I'm like, what do you mean what's coming? And they're like, well, you always hit too early. So what do you think is coming? Because I did the podcast. It was close, two fit chicks and a microphone. And I wrote a book, and we did an accompanying podcast, and I did those damn bracelets. And then like a month later, everybody's like, have you seen their bracelets with Livestrong? Serious, Lance? So, but I thought, and I swore never again for me with the not side hustle, but anything that was even remotely influencer. I mean, I've had such a great ride. Venus Williams reaching out and saying, hey, I want to work with you. But we do what we do. And so I started noticing, first of all, whether it was my team of persons with disabilities or the larger team in Africa, I'm always talking about movement, Solvitur ambulando, as I butcher the Latin, fitness, how that's the foundation of everything and how it doesn't need to be a lot, just a little bit every day. Leadership, whether you use the Pomodoro method or the Eisenhower matrix, if we want to nail that project, it's consistency. It's a little bit every day. And I thought, you know what? I have one last and final. Like, Africa is not my final. We just know. And it's coaching. And I thought, what am I coaching? It's write the book, the consistency advantage, teach what you know. No one's against consistency. We all want to get there. I'm your Sherpa. I will build the scaffolding. You identify what you want to build consistency in, and let's do it together. So yes, I launched a Substack. Late. I'm not first to that, so maybe it's perfect timing. But I keep saying there'll be no podcast, which means there will be a podcast. But it's sharing what I know, sharing how I've lived the past 30 plus years, and really making this my mark, because it's how, there's your bedroom, I raised that one into the human that she is. It's what I want to be remembered for.
I love it. And you're doing a hell of a job. And I thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule,
fun.
as a fitness professional, as a parent, as a CMO, who I always look up to great CMOs and what you've done. I appreciate it. And I wish you all of the best. And we will post all of the ways people can get to your Substack, and we'll keep an eye out for what's coming. Always be okay with being a settler and not always a pioneer.
That's it. That's exactly it. I'm going to let other people be a pioneer for a while.
There you go. Carla, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
You make this rather snappy, won't you? I have some very heavy thinking to do before 10 o'clock.